not to disarticulate it. Okay? Now, so I have it as long as it can get across this joint, right? Now what am I going to do with this joint?
Same thing.
Okay, so I'm going to go down again. Huh, it doesn't go as far. What is that called when a muscle can't maximally elongate?
Passive insufficiency.
Yay! Okay, so passive insufficiency can only occur in a two-joint muscle, right? Now, and how we are going to measure the length of a two-joint muscle is we are going to maximally elongate it at one joint, and then we're going to measure how far it can go at the other joint. So if we take biceps, what does it do with the shoulder?
Flex.
Flexes. What does it do with the elbow?
Flex.
Flex. Okay? So if we want to lengthen it completely at one joint, I don't care, pick a joint. Shoulder, what are we going to do if we want to lengthen it? Biceps at the shoulder.
Extend.
We're going to extend it. Okay? Now, what motion do we want to measure at the elbow?
Extension.
Extension, right? Because that's going to elongate the biceps. Now, what if we lengthened it at the elbow? What would we do? You just said it. We're going to extend it. Then what are we going to measure? Shoulder extension. Okay? It doesn't matter. They both are a test of biceps length. Let's take hamstring. Another two-joint muscle. What does the hamstring do with the hip?
Extend.
Extends. What does it do at the knee?
Flex.
Flexes. So now we have it moving in the opposite directions. So if we want to measure the length of the hamstrings, what do we do to it at the hip? We flex it, and then what do we measure? Extension. Okay, that's the 90-90 hamstring test. What if we did it the other way? What would we do at the knee if we were going to test hamstring length? Extend it, and then what are we going to measure at the hip? Flexion. Straight leg raise test. Okay? So for a two-joint muscle, to test muscle length, you're going to maximally elongate it at one joint, and then measure the available range at the second. It is not any harder than that. Okay? So if you know your anatomy, you can measure the length of any two-joint muscle. Now, how do you measure the length of a one-joint muscle? So if we have my little green muscle in here, right? It's just crossing one joint. How do I measure the length of that? Right. So I'm just going to do, now I'm going to do active or passive range of motion of the joint. Passive. Okay. How do I know that this muscle is what's causing the limitation in that range of motion? Two things. End feel. So we would want it to be a muscular end feel. But wait a minute. This red muscle also is being elongated at that joint. So now how do I know that it's the red muscle or the green muscle that's limiting that motion that I'm measuring at this joint?
Shorten it at the opposite point.
So if I shorten this here, this can't be what's limiting that joint anymore, right? So if this is still limited and I still have a muscular end feel, then it has to be the green muscle that's limiting that range of motion. Is everyone following? So we can still length test one joint muscle. It's just called something different. Okay? Now the shoulder, we're going to measure the pec, which is all considered. The reason I can say that it's passive is once she gets here, she's not actively holding them there. I'm asking her to just let them sit. Now it's really important that the back not come up. Her back is up just a little bit, so I might come in and go ahead and let me have your hands. There you go. So probably about there before her back is starting to come up. So I can do one of two things. I can either measure the distance from her olecranon to the table, okay, in centimeters. Or I can measure the shoulder flexion position with a goniometer, either one. For this one, Stacy, I always do this bilaterally, and then if I have to measure it, I'll have you put one arm down and do it. Do you ever do it unilaterally first?
No, because I want to see the comparison.
I know. So typically you wouldn't do a test bilaterally. Again, this is one of those things where you just have them come up because you want to see that. Okay? And then if there is an impairment, then you have them put one arm down and then you measure on either side. Okay? So I think the next ones are the pec. Yeah, okay. So this one, we have some super easy muscle length tests in the shoulder, which is great. So this is a really tricky one. I want you to just put your hands behind your head. Oh, that's it. Okay, this is the test for the general pec. So what you're doing here is measuring the distance of the table from the lateral epicondyle to the table in centimeters. Okay, now we all have soft tissue around that. So if I took that measurement, she actually would have a centimeter, centimeter and a half right there. But her arms are flat on the table. She couldn't go down anymore. So I would call this normal.
Does it matter if it's a olecranon or a lateral epicondyle?
No, either one, as long as you are consistent.
Okay.
Okay?
So by calling it normal, you'd still write down like the 1 or 2 centimeters, or you would just write down 0?
Actually what I would do is write down negative, meaning unremarkable.
Okay.
Okay? So this is general pec test. Isn't that great? Okay? So then we're going to go to the clavicular portion of the clavicle, which is at 90 degrees. And that is having their arm out. Okay. Amanda has no problems with her pecs. All right? So again, we're measuring the distance of her humerus from the table. So again, lateral epicondyle or olecranon to the table. So for her, I would just say 0 or negative because it's unremarkable. Okay? Now if I wanted to do the sternal portion, I'm going to bring her up to 135 degrees. You're eyeballing it, okay? So 135 is going to be 90 plus 45. Gets us to 135. And again, we're measuring that distance. Okay? So quick recap. General, clavicular, sternal. All right? Are we all good? Okay. So then we've got pec minor. It's even better than the general pec major because this is it. Okay? So what you do is you find the posterior acromion and you measure the distance from the posterior acromion to the table. That's it. All right? Now Amanda could go back. Oh, she did go back. So she could go back, and so then I would measure that. Now she's a lot better. So she was holding her tongue. It must be making people scared to death. It's my hair up. When my hair's down, people think I'm nicer. So she's a little tighter on her right than on her left. So I would go ahead and measure that because she's asymmetrical. Okay? So we've got lats. Don't show my belly. Lats, general, pec major, clavicular, pec major, sternal, pec minor. Alright? See, we were doing all this hard stuff, and this muscle length test stuff is so easy. I have these weird bone things, and all I have to do is test. Okay, so we have one more that I want to cover right now. And that is going to be, we're going to do a differential of the muscles that attach to the coracoid process. So what are the 3 muscles that attach to the coracoid? Short head of the biceps, pec minor, and coracobrachialis. Okay? So we want to, we're going to progressively eliminate them from the equation and see if her shoulder position changes on the table. And if it doesn't, we'll know that it's pec minor. Okay? So if we wanted to get rid of biceps, which is the one we do first, how could we shorten biceps at the elbow to see if it affects the shoulder? Yeah. Ta-da. Oh. And it did. So I'm monitoring the tension in her shoulder to see if there's a difference, and she went down when she flexed her elbow. So she maybe has the tight biceps on this side, and I would want to do a biceps muscle length test on her now. Okay? Now, how could I shorten the coracobrachialis just enough to see if it changes the tension in her shoulder? What does coracobrachialis do? Flex the shoulder. So, oh, no, it's past tense. So go ahead and relax for me. So I'm going to just bring her up. Now, if I bring her way up, her shoulder's going to go down. So you're only lifting it 5 centimeters off the table. If the shoulder goes down, then it's coracobrachialis. Okay? Her coracobrachialis is not contributing to a tightness in her shoulder. Her biceps is. Now she still has a little bit of ways to go, so her pec minor is also tight. Okay? So to do the differential, we're going to start by eliminating the biceps, and then we're going to eliminate coracobrachialis. Okay? Everything we do should make sense. So if you can make sense of it, it'll be so much easier to remember it than if you just try to memorize the test. Okay? There's a theme, right? Okay? So we did latissimus, general, pec major clavicular, pec major sternal, pec minor, and then we did the differential. Okay? So we just covered 6 tests, but they're pretty intuitive, hopefully. Okay? So go ahead and practice with your goniometers. Maximally flex at the elbow, and then measure the amount of shoulder flexion. Right? It's just for whatever reason in the clinic, that's not the one we use.
So you have to look at the scap here, or no? More like the lats, just it doesn't matter if the scap moves you up.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. We're gonna let her fly. Okay?
Yeah.
Biceps is the one that we're gonna focus on measuring at the shoulder. So we'll come back to triceps when we get to elbow. Blast from the fast. He's got. Just have one more. So for biceps, for the one that we're gonna measure at the shoulder, let's have you scoot that way so I can show it. So what I'm going to do is pronate her, extend her elbow, and then I'm going to measure her shoulder extension. Okay? So for this test, we don't have her in prone. We have her in supine, and we're letting gravity help us with this one. And now I'm going to measure the shoulder extension with the forearm pronated. She doesn't want to stay pronated. Okay, she wants to pop out of it. So I need to hold her in that pronation. Okay? All right, does someone have a goni? I won't keep you there while I... So if I have her here, you guys were gonna let me do that? I would not pass my own exam. Okay, so she's at 73. Okay, and again, that's a muscle length test, so it would be just a single number. Okay, so on Thursday we will start with triceps and biceps so that you have a chance